Today's video is all about Pendle, liberating yield. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive into this project, looking into some of the fundamentals, the team, the tokenomics, the utility, and the overall value proposition, trying to figure out whether Pendle has what it takes to make it to our portfolio. So you know what? Let's talk about the news, let's analyze the charts, and let's strategize to capitalize. Welcome to the channel. My name is Mike, and let's get right into it, guys. If you're new to the channel, welcome. On the channel, we talk about cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and all the altcoins, looking for opportunity. And the question is Pendle the opportunity? Guys, we're going to be doing a deep dive today, looking into the project, obviously looking into some of the details. We want to use the website as our main platform to gather some information, any white papers, any documentation, any posts, any correspondence from the team to collect and gather that data from a retail perspective. As retail enters the space, we got to make sure that these projects have all the data, all the information presented to us nice and clear so we understand exactly what is happening here. All right, guys, so let's begin. Let's see what's going on here with Pendle. Honestly, it seems like a very interesting project, given obviously it's part of the DeFi narrative. For those of you that have begun a bit of research, it's part of DeFi yield farming or yield, liquid staking, whatever, within that DeFi platform or DeFi narrative, there's a lot of little bells and whistles. And this is how Pendle kind of gets involved, is by understanding that yield is obviously something that we want to achieve when we lock up any tokens, and yield is just basically given the ability to earn passive income for rewards based on our interest in locking up some of our liquidity, some of our capital. So in this case, they give us options. They give us options as to where we could lock up our liquidity. As you can see, we have some stable coins, USDE yield, fixed yield 7.74%, and many others. USDS, we got 7.57%. So in a sense, you could almost in a way, trade your way to earning the best yield you can. So at one given point, a certain asset might be giving you the best yield. You can basically hunt and look for another asset or another stable coin, in this case, giving you better yield. As you can see, USDE provides a fixed yield that is better than the other two. So you might say, you know what, maybe I'm going to go and stake some up in there and earn that yield instead. So this is quite interesting because it gamifies the ability to earn yield. And obviously, if you're good at it and you could, identify trends and identify your certain edges on the yield, you definitely could, earn a little bit more. But what we're more interested in is all the little back-end fundamentals, right? All the little details that make this project amazing. Nonetheless, it's all about, taking that retail perspective. Earn now, if you click there, I'm sure you're going to get into some platform. I'm going to get into some of this, obviously, in a bit of detail here. Fixed yield for everyone. What does that mean? Find your stability amongst volatile yields, no lockup period. So this is interesting because we want to have access to our capital regardless, right? We want to be as liquid as possible. And of course, the industry is listening. The industry is listening because now if you unlock, usually sometimes the waiting period is 30 days. I think some of them nowadays are slowly coming down to about 15 days. And this is becomes the norm lately, being able to unlock and stake without any long-term periods and all of this kind of stuff, because essentially people want access to the liquidity. Control your yield, long yield, or hedge your yield exposure to the choice is yours. So it's important to understand that Pendle, in a way, has a dual system, and we're going to talk about the dual system and how because it's a liquid staking. At the end of the day, you get your tokens in a liquid form, but at the end of the day, your original tokens are staked up, which is interesting because it gives you still access to liquidity. We'll talk about this, and that liquidity, by the way, has some utility as well. Total value locked, as you can see, there's some good amount of numbers in there. Total trading volume, good amount of trading volume. We'll talk about that in a second for sure. And then cross-chain compatibility. Obviously, they're all EVM at the current moment. We have Ethereum, Arbitrum, BNB, and Optimism, all EVM compatible chains. Is there potential for future that we get into other chains, maybe chains that are not EVM, whether they be, I don't know, Solana-based or whatever the case is? Ultimately, this is potential moving forward for future, right? And we see a lot of cross cross-chain talk amongst the space, and eventually to remain competitive, it will be a scenario where, yeah, cross-chain or the chains have to be definitely, everything has to be multi-chain essentially. If you really want to be able to have that restrictions lifted from each chain to chain. Core technology, yield tokenization. This is an interesting one. This is their bread and butter. This is their main focus, where they split any yield-bearing asset into separate yield and principal components for maximum control. Guys, I'm going to do my best to explain this. Obviously, this deep dive is about the entire package. It's not necessarily specific to how the mechanisms work or the tech works for Pendle. It's a broad, big picture focus on Pendle as a crypto project in general, not only the tech stack in itself, but it's quite interesting what they've achieved here. The Pendle AMM, designed for yield trading with concentrated liquidity, dual fee structure, and basically negligible IL concern. So what I want to just focus here is this word right here, is the ability to trading yield trading with concentrated liquidity, which means that you can gamify now your ability to earn based on the different yield that exists, which is quite interesting. So you're trading based on your ability to earn yield, which is cool stuff. Lock Pendle for a stake in the protocol, and this is what you receive: V Pendle. So that duality, that dual system, you stake your Pendle, you get V Pendle, some sort of, it's a liquid asset in this case. It gives you some of that liquid state, in the sense that you can use these V Pendles to do other things within the ecosystem. And of course, governance is one of them, and we'll talk about that as we keep on going. So some documents, I have some tabs open, guys. I got tabs, don't worry. So we'll get through some of this, and trusted by some big names here, right? CryptoCapital.com, Hashkey, Sigma Capital, Sigma Capital, Alliance, Abra. So there are some big names, and what's interesting to me is that, like Sparta. What happens if I click them? For example, Binance Labs, nothing. Sometimes it's just taking it that one step further by be able to click some of the names here and titles, and be able to maybe be sent to a blog post that defines exactly why they would be trusted. Trusted by these individuals. But why? What's their affiliation, or what's their relationship like? And that's great. That's a good opportunity for the team to communicate why Binance Labs is important in this case, not just a logo, right? So could it be part of the incubator program of some sort? And most likely it could be, and that's great, of course. What else do we got? Audits, guys, tons of audits. And for those of you that are concerned about the contract audits, and of course we know that a lot of projects do get, unfortunately, exploited and all of that. And this is what I like to see, is that Pendle's taking, its due diligence to ensure that their contracts, their programming, their language, everything that they got going on with regards to the contract is audited. So we got many industry professionals auditing this contract, about, we say 8 of them, definitely going at it, making sure that it's bulletproof. So we appreciate that. But you got to understand why it's important. Obviously, it's important across the board on all projects, but especially if you're going to be staking up liquidity, right? Your own capital. The last thing you want to see is those liquidity pools drained, right? We've seen what happens in those cases, and it's very sad. It's very difficult. Sometimes the people that stake their capital, they lose their capital. But as long as the team is doing what they got to do to prevent all of that, and you can see that they're doing their best, like how many more audits could they actually achieve? Maybe more, you never know, but still, 8 of them is great. Now, as we conclude the website, you can see the website is decently designed, has a lot of good information. There are tabs that we need to open up and go through, which we'll do in a second. They have a Discord, a Twitter, and a Telegram, very industry standard, and we'll talk about that more. I was able to get, a hold of some of the members on some of the socials, which was great. They were very helpful in answering some questions that I had, and ultimately, from that front, it's great, social media-wise and communications-wise. Education, guys, these guys have it spot on with education. Okay, I haven't seen a project out there that put that much effort in educating the market. And in this case, as you guys know, I'm saying from a retail perspective, education is key, especially with a project such as Pendle. because Pendle's not easy to understand, especially with its mechanism. And sometimes it's not necessary to understand the full details, right? Because again, we're not meant to be computer scientists in order to understand an investment. That would be a barrier to entry, that would be friction, that would be red tape. That's not something that it should be the case. However, they take it one step further to say, look, if there is an individual that wants to understand a little bit more, let me make some educational material. And I totally appreciate that. So what am I referring to? They have a whole page here, where you can learn a whole bunch of stuff about the project, educational resources. And I'm not going to get through all of them. You guys can dig around and click and click and click and figure it out. But I did check out this video. And the video is quite interesting, guys. Like, ultimately, really, really cool. It gives you a lot of information about what yield tokenization is. So let's take a look at what that is for a second. You can see.
Yield tokenization means splitting a yield-bearing asset into two parts, the principal and the yield. An example for a yield-bearing asset is a rental property, because by owning the asset, it generates rent, aka yield, for you over time. Yield tokenization works by splitting the rental property into two parts, the rights to own the property, the principal, and the rights to own the rent, the yield. The price of both rights, the principal and the yield, make up the total price of the property. Hence, by splitting them apart, you can either buy the rights to own the property at a discount or buy the rights to own the rent. Let's take a look at the principal. Imagine there's a property on the market going for $105,000. After splitting it up, you'll be able to buy the rights to own the property for only $100,000. Assuming the contract has a 1-year maturity rate, this would mean that after holding the contract for a year, the property effectively becomes yours. Since you technically bought the property for only $100,000, you will make a profit of $5,000, or a 5% annualized percentage yield. This movement of value from the discounted price of the principal to the full value of the actual asset is the fixed yield. In Pendle, the principal of an asset is represented by a principal token, or PT in short. We'll use the ST ETH token to understand PT on Pendle. Assuming the price of an ST ETH token is 1 ETH, after splitting it up, you'll be able to buy the principal of the ST ETH token for 0.9 ETH with a maturity of 1 year. After holding the PT ST ETH token for a year, you can then redeem 1 ETH worth of ST ETH. And just like that, you just made 0.1 ETH in profit, or roughly 11% annualized percentage yield. Great job so far. We hope that by now, you'll understand what PT is. So let's move on to the yield. Going back to the rental property example, you spend $5,000 to buy the rights to own the rent of a property. You receive a contract that states that the owner of this contract is eligible to receive rent from this property for 1 year. After the 1 year has passed, the contract matures, and you will no longer be able to receive any more rent. Now, we know that rent fluctuates and is not fixed. So if you think that the total rent collected within this 1 year will be more than your initial cost of $5,000, then you'll make a profit. But don't worry, we'll teach you more on how to calculate your odds of making a profit in the later videos. Tying it back to Pendle, the yield aspect of a yield-bearing asset is represented by a yield token, or YT. You spend 0.1 ETH to buy a YTST ETH token with a 1-year maturity. This grants you the rights to earn the yield of a staked ETH token for a year at a cost of 0.1 ETH. The yield fluctuates from time to time, and you can claim your yield rewards as you go. As long as you've collected more than 0.1 ETH in yield rewards by the end of the maturity, you've made a profit. It's really as simple as that. Oh, and one more important thing. In case you wish to exit any of your PT or YT positions before maturity, you can easily do so by selling your tokens on Pendle at any point of time. Your positions are not locked on Pendle. Your tokens, your choice. That's it for today's video. If you want to learn more in-depth...
All right, guys, as you can see, they do a great job. There's a lot of different resources here that you could check out, so you can learn about the project, you can learn about what they offer, and obviously the learning here is great. So going back to the educational page, you can see that they got a lot going on here, tons. So go check it out, you can learn a lot. Let's move on. We do see that they do have their platform here to actually navigate all the trading, all the different chains that they offer, as you can see, and obviously all the yield capabilities, the fixed and the long yield APY. You can see the YTs and the PTs that they just discussed in that video. These are your options. There's tons of options here for you to stake up on all these stable coins. As you can see, stable coins might be one of the hottest ideas in the next little while, because we look for ability to keep our assets in safety, in the sense of non-volatile markets. So we want something to go sideways for a little while, whether it be through a bear market or whatever the case is. But we would still like to keep our capital working for us in a very safe way, right? And not exposed to volatility of the market. And stable coins introduce that ability to stay stable, but at the same time, the ability to put those stable coins to work and earn some APY as we keep it staked. Guys, this is the value proposition. And then obviously being able to trade between different assets so you can maximize your earning potential. Not bad of a scenario. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the documentation from a tokenomics perspective. We got lots, in fact. Let's start from the top. You can see the introduction, all of this, lots of good learning material. Again, I would highly suggest that you go through it all. There's too much for me to go through on a deep dive. Good videos, introduction videos, some graphs. What does Pendle do? Yield tokenization. So remember, it splits the whole concept into two parts. You know, we have the yield bearing assets, and then that basically PT, principal token, and YT, yield token. And then you can basically decide how you're going to get that exposure to yield. And again, we talked about this. I'm going to try not to get so repetitive. Is there underlying APY shown on Pendle differ? You can see liquidity provision, swap fees generated by the pool, Pendle incentives. There's lots of incentives. Do I have to stake my LP to earn rewards? You don't have to stake the LP tokens. All LP token holders will receive their fair share of rewards. What is Pendle? So Pendle is an interesting thing, because not only is it the liquid portion of you being able to stake. So you stake, you get Pendles. But the best part is about the Pendles that you could basically participate in governance, right? So participating in governance introduces the concept of a DAO, right? Decentralized autonomous organization. Now, I would like to say that the organization is not completely decentralized, but they do introduce a level of governance, right? So we'll talk about the level of governance and that a little bit, but you can see that's what the more tokens, the Pendles that you have, the more basically you will be able to express your voice in the governance system. Okay, so that's that. When does Pendle unlock? Pendle for up to 2 years. Okay, security is audited. We talked about that. Okay, so there are some key terms like the YP, the SYs, and all these little acronyms and things like that. Guys, go do your research, of course. Yield bearing tokens, as we talked about before, and maturity, underlying implemented. Okay, let's get right to the yield, the different yield tokens. We talked about that. Liquidity, engines, order books, so much happening here. Let's jump right into tokenomics, because I think that's where we should spend a little bit of time now. So I'm going to say this, guys. This looks like a Git book, okay, but it does seem outdated. There's no date anywhere. I do see here Pendle distribution as of 2022, but I feel like this is the image itself that is 2022. But when was this whole document created, this whole thing created? There's no indication to me that it is current or anything like that. And given the fact that this is from 2022, means that this is highly outdated, given, you know, this is the tech space, it moves really quickly. So we don't know, you know, where they are within this you know, distribution. Obviously, they wanted to give ecosystem fund 19.2%, which is, you know, healthy. who is in charge of the ecosystem fund? That is the question, right? And the team is fully involved here in the ecosystem fund. So they make call the shots on how this is deployed into the marketplace. The team is behind a vested schedule, which I believe they're fully diluted already, right? So calculating circulating supply, calculating this into the mix. A lot of the tokens are in circulation. Okay, so let's be real about that. That's great because you don't risk too much dilution. And then incentives. What happens here is all the incentives for staking. So basically, from incentives for emissions so far. So they basically have some already, obviously deployed incentives already in emissions or emitted. And in this case, I believe that this is going to be slightly outdated, guys. Feel free to check that out and use that as you feel. Now, what's important and why I'm not sticking to this too much is because there's no max supply here. So understanding that, dependent on how the tokens get distributed and dependent on how the governance comes into play, things can change in this space, in this scenario, which means that, based on governance, they can vote for some certain certain incentives to be increased, for example, or the ecosystem fund to be increased or something like that. And then all of a sudden, based on max supply, tokens can be issued. And we know that there's scenarios like that where there's max supply, like, there's Ethereum that is in the same boat, max supply. And then we look at how does the team or how does the structure, keep inflation at bay, and we'll talk about that as well. As of September 2024, all the team and investor tokens have fully vested, so we don't have to worry about the team and all of that. That's good. Any increase in circulating supply will be contributed by incentives and ecosystem building, so the incentive part, and that's good because the incentive should give people the incentive to stake, right? An ecosystem fund should be a fund that is help build the ecosystem. So what they're saying is after this, all capital is essentially going to be poured into growing this thing, okay, which is what we want to see. The Pendle emissions eventually should slow down, right? So weekly emissions as of September 2024, and they'll decrease it. So you can see the emissions is 216,000 tokens with a 1.1 decrease each week until April 2026, which is, coming up soon, in about a year or whatever. But ultimately, at this point, it will switch to a terminal inflation rate of 2% per annum for incentives. So eventually, will flatline. The amount of emissions will flatline. So it's not necessarily deflationary, but it definitely controls the inflation where it eventually flatlines. If it were to be deflationary, there would be some sort of mechanism, such as a burn mechanism, that eventually will reduce the circulating supply, right? So we want to make sure it holds steady, so it's not inflationary, but still it would be nice because it's max supply. As new tokens enter the total supply or in circulation, how do we have a mechanism to reduce that? Now, again, because of governance, these mechanisms can be introduced at a later date. We know that Pendle's new, it's fresh, it's not really focusing on that. But in the future, it could be quite viable to have some sort of mechanism, a burn mechanism, to have that scenario where, again, tokens get removed, very similar to what Ethereum introduced last year. Now, going forward from that, the whole concept of staking is that tokens do get out of circulation. Now, technically, they're not, because you can unstake them and they become very liquid. That's one of Pendle's value proposition. With a click of a button, you can sell them and get liquid again, and which is great, obviously. But then we cannot say that staking it keeps them out of circulation. In the past, we've seen staking be, within a period of a year, lock it up for a year, you own this APY. That, okay, maybe for a year, that there's an amount of locked capital, and then ultimately you can, be a little bit assured that that capital is not going to enter in circulation. But with something so liquid like Pendle, which basically means that you can get your assets out of the locked state so quickly, it really, consider that as a mechanism to keep circulating supply locked up and out of circulation is quite difficult to digest here. So look, I'm not saying that that incentive to keep tokens locked is not there. It definitely is there with that APY. People are going to volunteer to stake up their capital in order to earn that APY. But is it a guarantee? No. Okay, so a burn is guaranteed. That's what the difference. And I appreciate a bit of a burn if there would be, and maybe there's something there in the future. Circulating supply. As I mentioned, little by little, there's going to be emissions, and because of the max supply, we are going to see a circulating supply go up bit by bit forever and ever. But what we have to understand is if Pendle and Pendle as a project keeps on growing, that supply will get absorbed. And utility tokens tend to have this max supply concept because they feel like ultimately it will grow and grow and grow, where these tokens are going to get absorbed across an entire ecosystem, and essentially it will get absorbed. However, guys, it's something that we need to keep an eye on. The total supply of Pendle tokens are at any point in time is the circulating supply plus Pendle in 4 addresses above. So we have to understand that there are 4 addresses, Pendle locked. You can read them right here. Pendle locked here, Pendle ecosystem fund, governance, and T multi-signature address. So this plus the circulating supply equals the total supply. Okay, which means that whatever you see in total supply is essentially all the tokens that are in circulation, including these that are locked up into these categories. Okay, because you can see some of them are like locked, right? Ecosystem fund could be issued at any point in time by the team. They're in full control of this address of these tokens, right? So that's something that we have to understand, right? We got to trust them that they're not going to sell. It's not a huge amount, but still, we're going to trust them that eventually, if they need the funding, that they're going to distribute those accordingly and appropriately and responsibly in order not to cause dilution, right? That's the whole concept there. Now, if we look at what vPendle is, again, vPendle, in order to get vPendles, you need to basically stake up your pendles, right? So it relies on vote escrow pendle, also known as vPendle. So this is important. vPendle is the token that you use for governance. High degree of decentralization, which is okay. By utilizing vPendle and Pendle, holders gain access to an array of features that increase tokens utility. And some of them, like we mentioned, it's already the governance. Voting for APY, receive base APY, and boost LP rewards, right? So these are some of the key concepts of staking Pendle. So the incentive. So this is their mechanism to keep circulating supply at bay, is provide awesome incentives. So Pendle could definitely be staked. So you receive vPendle, and Pendle gets taken out of circulation, and then you get vPendle, and you want those vPendles because of this, right? So vote. And then you get some sort of incentives, receive base APY, and boost LP reward. These are the incentives. Now, could this be added to and modified? For sure. Everything can be done, I guess, through governance. Getting a vPendle. You just basically lock Pendle and receive vPendle. Very simple. Incentive channeling. You can see there's different incentives, fees, and rewards. There's a lot to be said here, right? Because Pendle collects a 5% fee from all yield. Okay, this is how they earn, which is important because currently 100% of the fee is distributed to vPendle holders. So that's the incentive. Essentially, all the fees that they earn from or collect from all the yield and all the transactions that are happening, essentially, they get redistributed to vPendle holders, while the protocol collects no revenue. So they collect revenue, sure, but it's not for the protocol. It's for redistributed straight into vPendle holders. This is a subject to change in the future. Understood, but right now that's the incentive of being a vPendle holder, is that you're basically being profit shared. They're profit sharing everything to their holders. Right? So which is great. That's the incentives. A portion of the yield from mature under deemed PTS will be distributed pro rata to vPendle holders as well. Okay, interesting. So a portion of that of the matured unredeemed PTS. For example, mature PT equivalent. Okay, we're not going to get into the example. Fees on points. If you get points and fees, if you get the fees on points are applied similar to Pendle treats. So more gamification about these points. You get points, you get rewards. vPendle APY. You can see there's APY incentives, LP boosts, reward boosts, which is good. More gamification. Cool stuff. Like you can see that the whole concept here is to maximize your yield, playing within the ecosystem with all these different little intricate, design features. Interesting stuff for sure. Fees. So more concepts regarding the fees. Pendle Protocol has two revenue sources. We talked about this one already. Pendle collects a 5% fee, including points, okay, by YT in existence. So we talked about these, the YT, and all yield included all points negotiated from the of maturity undermined PTs. Okay, so basically a 5% fee. Now the YT fees on points, basically another 5%. Since points are stacked off chain, partner protocols deduce the 5% fee with allocation points to the user's wallet. So you get some fees on points and you get fees on, the YT fees. Basically, there's the fees, the 5% everywhere, which is good. You get a lot of rewards the team can definitely earn here. And you can see that these are the wallets, the fee wallet addresses, full transparency. Everything can be seen here. Swap fees, fee distribution, and so on. So good stuff. Lots to read here, of course, with regards to some of the details. And then there's some guides here, lock, claim rewards, channels, and so on and so forth. So good stuff. What else we got here? Security. Remember, we talked about the audits, which is good. And there's some white papers that you can get into that is, very technical and so on. I try to look into that, but they're more like articles of different aspects of the project. So go check it out if you're interested. So generally speaking, that I think that we got an understanding of what we're doing here with this, of what Pendle's value proposition is. To summarize, again, I'm going to give you a full summary towards the end about everything that we talk about here. But to summarize, literally, it is about staking your Pendle tokens into one of these. Let me just try to make this simple. Into one of these, you basically in relation to that, you do get some V Pendles. Okay, those V Pendles, by being a holder, you get rewarded in many different ways. Okay, and obviously I listed those right there. So interesting stuff. And just keep in mind that different pairs offer different APY, as you can see. Okay, so that's that. Let's see what else we got here. And then I was trying to do more research on the tokenomics. I wish, because the tokenomics itself, as far as the vesting schedules and all of that and the emissions, this is a 3-minute read, yes, but it's outdated. It's from 2021, Pendle tokenomics, and this is a bit of a repetition of what we already talked about. And because it's outdated, I wish there was some sort of updated information. A lot of it that they've offered seems to be outdated, so I feel a little bit insecure about some of the numbers. And as you can see, even their Medium posts, guys, the last time they posted on Medium was a good while ago, which is from 2024 and 2024, and nothing for this year whatsoever, 2023. So their Medium page is pretty much unmanned, it seems, here at the moment, which is not the best, and which is cool, which I like this, because ultimately this is what they are focusing on here lately on their roadmap, which we're going to talk about in a second. Okay, so let's keep on going. Now we can look at their token distribution on Etherscan. I did the math, and approximately 60% or so is in circulation. We'll get into those details a little bit more, and you can see holders are increasing nice and slowly, which is great. And if you look at wallet distribution, you can see 21% for vPendle, staked up there. And then you got liquidity for different chains, Arbitrum and Binance and so on. And then you start to get into a very healthy distribution. A lot of these are Crypto.com, Bybit Wallet, Wormhole, all the different things. And then you can see that we got a lot of little micro wallets holding, healthy amount of capital. So it's not bad, generally speaking. We're doing okay. A lot of liquidity spread across the main, exchanges, DEXs and centralized exchanges, both alike. What else do we got here? We can see that their socials are doing pretty good, like in the sense that, they got 150,000 followers. That's pretty solid. And, their engagement could be a little bit better, considering that they have 150,000. They're only getting 60 likes on some of these, 7 likes, I expected 37 likes. Like, I feel like there's a little bit more action here that could be had within the community, or even within the team, or something to get some more action happening. It's just not enough look at that one, like eight likes, 4 reposts. It's kind of dry in comparison to the amount of followers that they have, so a bit more action there. And then I feel like I know a lot of us use this website, crypto rank, and this information is I'm just to let you know, seems again a little bit blurred and outdated. I believe some at one point this could have been valid, but the reality is a lot of this is already unlocked. That's cool, but I'm not getting much information. And the only valid information that I was really to get here that I was confident in using is the team. Okay, so let's jump right into the team. We got an idea of what the project is about, some of the tech, and now a bit of the socials, and now let's talk about the team. Now the team is, the first impression that I got is that they're young. They're young, and they got lots of not so much experience only, but education. They're smart individuals, right? And that's what we look for. It's young talent. This is an emerging market with young talent, and if we can find young talent that has great value propositions, guys, there's nothing else to be said. So let's just begin here. I got, how I usually do. I go on their LinkedIn accounts, kind of see what they're all about. The team right now, you can see 24 associate members. I don't know how many are still on board or what the case is, but there's lots of talent here. Okay, so I picked a few of them, some of the leads. Long Vong, this dude right here, he's the head of engineering. Okay, so he's got some education. You can see head of engineering, smart contract lead, and so on. This is what I like to see. Okay, this is what I want to see. Someone that is dedicated to smart contracts. I've done deep dives, guys. You guys know I've done 100 of them already, over 100. And sometimes I go into projects that don't even have anybody that is manning the tech. And to see that at least we have one for now, one software engineer that is fully dedicated to the smart contract platform and does have software engineering experience, basically jump trading. Okay, that's really good because again, it is a DEX, it is a DeFi project. National University of Singapore. And look at this, data structure and algorithm, programming methodology. These are all computer science related, educational backgrounds. You can see Bachelor of Computer Science, informatics, which is high school for, look at that, very smart individual right here. Okay, so I appreciate it. Obviously, somewhat doxed here, which is great. We go on forward. We have Kevin Luke, co-founder here of this, co-founder here, and then strategic investor. Now, the reason why I brought this up, because it looks like this dude is just involved in a lot with regards to various tech, but he's basically a business individual, it seems. So, some business background, some business connections, some business concepts are always helpful. And then we got the senior software engineer, another software engineer, Shopee. We have software engineer here and here and here. Again, University of Technology. So tech talent everywhere. And another dude here stacked up with that. Blockchain developer, blockchain AI software engineer, Shopee, and so on and so forth. Python programmer, blockchain, and okay, just talent. Okay, now we're gonna get on to the co-founder and CEO. Okay, now NTL. Okay, he's doxed. His LinkedIn page is not completely, let's say established per se, but he has videos out there and people know of who he is and so on and so forth. So he does have a lot happening. I'm going to give you a little bit more other than the LinkedIn account. The reason why is because he's the face right now. He's the face, and he's the main let's say from a individual perspective, from a personnel perspective, he's the value proposition, right? If you're looking at a face to a name type of thing. Okay, so what we have here is director of Donna Labs full-time. Okay, and then this is experience, a consultant, rock miner, and then founding team member, head of business at Kyber Network. Okay, so we know Kyber has been around. We know Kyber, what is it about, and ultimately that's a value. That's definitely some value. His education, do we have anything? I don't really see anything. Languages, okay, cool stuff, but experience, I don't see any education. But it seems to me that this is not, established, right? So maybe he needs to put up some attention to it, because a lot of people do use this nowadays. I do. I want to know the team and what they're all about. Now, I do go on the IQ wiki. gives you a little bit more information. This is him right here, people in crypto. And you can see, you could read about him, his initial interests in the space, videos everywhere. He's there, very, very open to speak about Pendle, which is great. YouTube has a lot of, material on what he has to say, which is good. Kyber and Pendle, his whole involvement, which is good. So yeah, you could say he's pretty doxed. The LinkedIn account is not established, but everything else is pretty good. So young talent, that's what I look for. And ultimately they got that covered. Now, let's talk about the roadmap here a second. The roadmap, could need use an update. Look, I didn't find an official roadmap, but I did find this blog post that talks about Pendle in 2025. Now, the market in 25 will be noisy and turbulent. We know that, very turbulent and very noisy, but it includes two initiatives, Citadels and Boros. And they're totally new, right? And again, this document was produced or released in February 2025. So it's not that old, but, it's maturing. But they highlight what those concepts are. What are the Citadels and the Boros, right? So if you guys want to know exactly what those developments are that are going to be issued in the next little while, these are in the pipeline. Guys, go and read the documents. This is more than a roadmap per se. This would be an extension of a roadmap, but there's no real clear roadmap as to exactly what they're doing and trying to achieve, maybe by a quarterly basis or anything like that. But at least that this is in the pipeline, and you know what? They're not stingy on the details here and what these are, the Citadels, as you can see, and the whole concept and why and all of this. Guys, go read the rationales on Boros and this and that. You can see disruption with real impact, and they get into all of the details of why they are focusing on these technologies or these implementations. This is what I like to see, no doubt. So, okay, maybe they don't have a full-on detailed roadmap, but at least they give you some information, much more than a roadmap would in this case. Okay, so I know accountability is important with regards to timeline and all of that, but in software, it's very difficult, and sometimes this compensates for sure. All right, guys, we did pretty good here. The overall value proposition is quite interesting, but I definitely want to give you guys my summary. And as you guys know, I do produce a graphic for all the deep dives that I do. I'm going to post this all over the socials, so let me show you what I'm talking about. Here we go. Pendle, an overview. It's a DeFi protocol that enables users to tokenize and trade future yield from yield-bearing assets, such as, different stable coins across the space. Okay. And then they basically split these assets into two principal tokens, the PT and the yield tokens, which is the YT. And this is what's important. It creates an entire marketplace for, fixed and variable yield opportunities. And that's where you can kind of like farm or gamify or tradeify your ability to earn as much yield as possible. Okay, that's as a package. Now, there's obviously those details that we discussed. Let's see what we can come up with as far as a quick summary here. The ecosystem, guys, there's a lot in the background. So I did a bit of research on some of their relationships within their ecosystem. They got PenP, Hidden Hand with some Beefly Finance. A lot of these are small but necessary implementations for their internal ecosystem. As a small projects themselves, I think it is very viable for you to research some of these little implementations. I did go and check some of them. They're quite interesting, particularly the Hidden Hand. I would love to learn more about what Hidden Hand is and what it does. And of course, there's a lot of documentation to be had with regards to some of these things, but some good ecosystem projects that they have already in the pipeline and established as a foundation. So I appreciate that. Again, more detail needs to be had there, but I'm going to leave that up to you for you guys to do some more research here. Utility, staking. I think that obviously staking, the ability to stake and secure the network, right? To secure the whole stability of this project, provide liquidity, right, to the project, and then rewards, right, for doing that. And those rewards are the APY and that type of stuff. And then the governance, right? So what you can do with the Pendle token is that you get vPendles in exchange, and with those vPendles, you get a whole plethora of opportunities as a token holder or a staker. So this is major utility here. 8 out of 10. Now, I would like to see more with regards to the governance, right? That for me would be a little bit more there. Apply more to that concept of what the actual token holders can vote on, like maybe some sort of some reward structure for ecosystem growth. That would be good. Like, who's in charge of the ecosystem growth aspect of their liquidity, of their capital that they have available? And right now it's fully the team. The team is fully in charge of the fund, which for me could benefit to kind of diversify some of that through governance and utility. So the token is good, it has a lot of great utility, but I think we may have a little bit more. Roadmap is needed, so 100% we need to get that going. I think that ultimately, yeah, they're without a roadmap that is detailed, like not as far as time goes. You can do a quarterly roadmap. So by the end of this quarter, we want to achieve this. By the end of this quarter, we want to achieve that, and that's great. That for me is enough. I don't need day to day, hour to hour, but at least they have that document that I showed you guys from 2025. Roadmap includes bold new initiatives, and those initiatives are quite interesting. As I mentioned, more research needs to be done there. The team is doxed. Okay, so a lot of good information there regarding the team. Young team full of talent. I appreciate that when I see youth and hustling, and applying all their strength to get things happening. And I appreciate that. Software engineers, business, DeFi experience, you name it, they got it, and I appreciate it. Okay, so that's good. 10 out of 10. Socials, good followers. Discord is active and very, very helpful. Guys, I was able to ask questions and get answers from qualified individuals. I'm not sure if they're completely team members, but it seems like they were, because they were very knowledgeable. So that's great. The Telegram is only announcement. And that Telegram's, it's quite popular. So maybe open it up. Maybe, get a mod in there and open it up, because a lot of the degens love Telegram. I don't know, just my 2 cents. Tokenomics. Not bad. Emission will be decreased by 1.1% until April 2026, so that's good. And then eventually we'll flatline at 2% per year, which is fine. No burn mechanism. Doesn't have does have lockup incentives though. This is where a lot of new people, and I know the narrative has kind of simmered down, but last cycle it was all about inflation. Oh, inflation this and inflation that. And that's because of Ethereum. In last cycle was completely inflationary because it had a max supply. Now, because of that, new tokens were entering the market over and over and over. And in bear markets, tokens still entered and price was being diluted. And this is why Ethereum would suffer significantly, because of the dilution. Now, when we have the same scenario, most people, especially individuals that are new, or even the ones that have hung around a while and know this history, as soon as they see no max supply, infinite supply, right away, where's the burn mechanism? That's right away that comes to my mind. Okay, how are they going to control this? That's fine that it's unlimited. It's cool. I understand the reasoning. Now, how are they going to control it? Well, there's an incentive for lockup, and they're going to try to keep everything, maybe within the governance, to keep everything at bay. They do their weekly, a weekly vote and things like that. Maybe a weekly vote for how many tokens and that get released and so on and so forth. That might be valuable, because again, as a max supply, you want to make sure that your total supply is in check. Right? Not even circulating. You want to make sure that your total supply is in check. And this is important. The ecosystem fund is handed by the devs. So that's another problem. It's not a huge problem, but it's a bit of a faith-based system. The devs are in full controls of the ecosystem fund, which if the rest is in circulation, the team is in circulation or are unlocked already based on the vesting schedule, then the majority of the tokens that, are in circulation but locked up to the team is quite a bit, right? And that, it's not a lot, but still, like, okay, wouldn't it be nice to put that behind, or some of it behind governance as well, to see exactly where the community feels some tokens need to be spent? And it might be, a good way to get people interested and feel involved and so on. So that's the only thing I like when I see, especially scenarios like this. I like to see governance that has a little bit of creativity and gets people interested more than just voting on one little aspect here and there, right? So a full-fledged governance program would be awesome. There, relationships, Binance Labs, and so many others, guys. I like the Binance Labs, 10 out of 10. Lots of good GMX, Lido Finance, Anchor. Like, we got lots of good relationships, but I want to know more. And that's just where the blog posts come in handy. Those links, those logos on their website should be clickable, and they should go to straight to some informative page for each one saying exactly what it is. Guys, it doesn't take much. You know, I'm sure there's someone on the team that does communications and marketing. Get them on board, get them going. Guys, this is an opportunity to explain exactly what is happening with some of these relationships. And even if they're super bullish. Binance Labs, that for me is, if it's part of the incubator program, tell me exactly what's going on there. I want to know, right? And exchanges, 10 out of 10, tons of liquidity everywhere. Binance, Coinbase, Mexi, everywhere. Lots of the major exchanges, DEXs, and centralized exchanges. And they did a great job there. So you can't really trade exchange listings in this case because they're already listed everywhere, right? So for those of you that are waiting for it to be listed, too late, guys, that's done. So, you know, overall, guys, there's a lot of good clarity here. You know, there's a lot, maybe a few little improvements, but really, Pendle's solid. And, you know, maybe my voting here is, you know, could be a little bit critical, which I like to be critical because then we can actually find gaps and opportunity as well. Because sometimes people see low numbers, but they don't think about it as opportunity. If you wait for a project to be 10 out of 10 across the board, it's likely to be overvalued in that case, or likely to be at a very high valuation because it's doing really well. We have to find gaps and opportunities, right? And those imbalances, not only in charts but also in fundamentals, are critical because that's where you find undervalued opportunities and opportunities where you can get, you know, access to on the cheap. So ultimately, we're doing pretty good here. You can see that a lot of projects, you know, come in, especially nowadays, at a tough evaluation because the market hasn't been doing great. Market cap, you know, it's small. It's not large, but it's small-ish. I would say it's a mid cap at this current moment, and good trading volume, guys. Crazy trading volume in the last little while. That's something that we got to appreciate. I look for good trading volume above 10% at least, and we're definitely hitting that. Total and circulating supply are equal. So basically, what I'm trying to say by that is the total plus the circulating supply plus all the locked capital everywhere, they're equal. So, you know, we don't risk dilution too much unless, again, more tokens get issued in the total supply, and a lot of us are worried about that when we talk about max supply. We yapped about that already. Let's talk about my verdict in general. Look, I like the project. The project is solid. You know, definitely should be considered. Whoa. Let's go back there. Sorry, guys. Should be considered an opportunity, no doubt. And what I would do is definitely start looking into some of the details here. Let me do that for you guys before I lose my focus again. DeFi. LSDFI, so a liquid staking derivative, you know, finance, you know, in a decentralized way. Obviously, we talked about Pendles and stuff. The DEX, it is like a DEX you can trade, but you're trading, you know, stable coins essentially, and you're trading interest, yield bearing assets. You know, basically it's like you're farming yield, and it's pretty interesting. Of course, it's part of the EVM narrative. A lot of the chains that it does work on, or it's involved with, is EVM. So that's cool. TGE, it's 4 years and 1 month ago, 9 days. So, you know, it's been around for a bit. It's not completely new, but it's been attracting a lot of attention lately, which is good. Fully audited contract by reputable auditors. Lots of them. I think about 8, if I'm not mistaken. Guys, that's great. We need that, especially for something like this where we're expected to lock up capital into liquidity pools. Lock Pendle for Pendle. We already spoke about that. Weekly emissions. We talked about this. What's going to happen? They're going to come down over time until they reach the 2% per annum for incentives. LP incentives are determined by weekly Pendle votes. So this is where you get the governance. This is the only reason, the only thing right now that is clear to me that the governance, what is the governance for? It's for the LP incentives. And that's about it for weekly votes there. Just for terminology, principal tokens, PT, represents the underlying asset at maturity, and yield token, the YT, represents the yield the asset will generate. So you can buy both, you can get involved in both, like the video I showed you. Pendle protocol distributed all protocol revenue to Pendle holders. Guys, that is critical, because everything that they earn is being sent basically as rewards to holders, to Pendle holders. So with no allocation to the Pendle treasury whatsoever. In the future, this will change, but right now there is nothing like that. So Pendle holders get this. This is the value proposition of buying Pendle and getting your Pendles. 80% of all swap fees, that's what you will get. A cut of the yield farming from matured unredeemed principal tokens, and fees from yield tokens, 5% of all the yield. That is the opportunity. And right now, what they're realizing is if you treat the token holders, the stakers, well, there will be an incentive to take those tokens out of circulation and lock them up into in one of those pools, which is exactly the strategy right now, that in my opinion. I think it's great. I think it's a good idea. Pendle with market cap of $5 billion. Let's say we get there. You can easily make an 8x, get to about $30, $33, $30. That's a very modest target for an extension for a bull run. Guys, overall, my rating, I give the thing a 9 out of 10. A few little tweaks on some of the documentation, updating some of the paperwork, some of the, the Git book, put some dates on there, put a graph with regards to emissions, put a few things out there so that we can get a little bit more confident in some of the most recent thing, a roadmap. Guys, communication is key, particularly when it comes to, a retail investor. The retail investor, the modern retail investor that wants to educate themselves, right, wants to know a little bit about the project. And if it's hard to get access to it and to be able to read it and find it and get most current information, it's just really deterring. It's red tape, it's friction, and no friction necessary here whatsoever. So overall, I like the project. It's a 9 out of 10. It's an interesting narrative, and it could be definitely an up-and-coming opportunity. All right, guys, let's take a look at some of this price action. Let's see what's going on here with the Pendle token. In the last little while, it's been doing pretty good. In fact, even if you compare the entire run, this higher moment, Pendle, in fact, has been outperforming a lot of assets. Right now, it's at about $4. You can see it has been going a little bit sideways, but from running from its bottom to about 0.045 cents, it's been doing pretty good. Now, the question is, do we continue to the upside, or do we come down through the imbalance? Let's take a look at this in a little bit more detail. So, as you guys know, let me just get into linear logarithmic scale so we can see exactly what this looks like, because there's a difference. You can see that there's an imbalance below. If we stay in linear, let me just quickly show you what I mean. There's a bit of an imbalance below, and it does look scary. Of course, look at that. We can come all the way down here for sure. There's no doubt in my mind. But if you put the chart into logarithmic and you start looking at it, it doesn't look as bad. So I don't know if you find that to be a deceiving way to look at a chart, but most traders, we look at it in logarithmic scale, right? Because it emphasizes the importance of the last price action right here, and it doesn't really change much with regards to the way we read it in sense. It's just a visual. So if you look at what's happening here, we can clearly see that there is a structure being formed here. I'm going to do this very loosely so we can just see. There is a structure. It's a pretty tall structure. It's a wide structure. It ranges from top-ish about $6 to all the way bottom-ish to about $2. Guys, that's a big move. That's a big range to be fluctuating in. Now, you can see that there's not much volume. There's pockets of areas where there's no market participation. This impulsive move right here was purely stagnant volume. People accumulated, and then you can see all the accumulation range right into here, and then possibly retail came in and squeezed it right up, bit by bit, boom, 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 little by little. Now all of a sudden we start looking at where's the support. The reality is the majority of the support is down here. Okay, that's where the volume is at. That's where the liquidity is. Now, I'm not going to say that it's going to come down here. Absolutely not. What I'm going to say is that we have to look for areas of interest. And the areas of interest, if we get onto the daily time frame, you can see it's this structure. This structure right now is what's the most interesting. And obviously here is critical because here at $1.33, we have some tops, and we entered the zone where there is volume and emotion. And that's where people can be, it could be a very serious event for a lot of people because they've been holding and maybe they didn't take profit, or maybe they're over leveraged, or maybe they just bought too many and their exposure is too high. So it's an emotional level. However, guys, if we can stay above these two bottoms, this level right here needs to be protected. All this right here needs to be protected. Now, if it continues to be protected, there's no doubt in my mind that this is an impulsive move. Okay, now we're consolidating, and then eventually these consolidations lead to bangs, breakouts. And usually coming in from an impulsive move, they're continuations, right? And we're talking about a potential move to the upside, which I appreciate. And you can see there's good volume right in here. Now we can see that because it's upwards, right around here, we got sell pressure, right? Sell pressure, a bit of buy pressure. So it's very active right in here. Even though it's not a lot, you can see it's barely registering right here on the volume profile. Even in comparison to here, you can see there's a node of volume right here, empty volume gap right here, another empty volume gap right here. So tons of opportunity. Let me just get rid of some of this artwork. So tons of opportunity for you to identify imbalances in this chart. So let me just highlight this. This is an imbalance, clearly. Okay, we can fall right through here. In fact, I would say, we can fall right down to here because that's where the volume is at. That's where liquidity is at. That's where the market makers might want to hunt those levels, right? We got to be aware of that. And there's an empty volume gap right here. You can see that there's a node of volume here for resistance. And that's where I'm going to say, you know what, just keep your eyes open, because if we get there, it could be a level of interest. Now, we could get shorts there. There could be shorts there that get squeezed, and then we continue to the upside based on a short squeeze. And it all depend on the sentiment of the market, obviously led by Ethereum, because if Ethereum shows strength, we're going to see a lot of the altcoins show strength. And given that Pendle is EVM, it could benefit from an Ethereum pump for sure. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So I'm looking at all this. I believe that this is a great opportunity. Okay, this general area is a great opportunity, but if we come down here, do we come down for another lower low? And if that's the case, I can see it coming down to this level right here at minimum. Point of control, hunting this liquidity. I don't know how much of it, how strong the bears are going to come in if we come down to that level, but it's a level of which you should have at least some comfort in digesting what you're going to do there if the price comes down there. Obviously, nobody knows where the price is going to go. There's no certainties in this market. However, there is a certainty that we need to prepare for all possibilities. And this is definitely possible, guys. It's definitely possible. Now, is it probable with a high degree? No. Not yet. We have a lot of work to do to come down here. So right now it's taking it day by day. Let's zoom in and see what's really happening here. I appreciate this V recovery significantly here, guys. I like V recoveries because they give me an idea of the strength of the recovery, but it doesn't show me a healthy accumulation. Healthy accumulation for me looks rounded, right? Limit orders, healthy accumulation. V recovery is a strong market maker price action, which we like because we get good bullish responses. But if you're looking into market making opportunities with aggression, most of those people, especially if you're getting in with leverage, most of those individuals are looking for profit taking opportunities as well. And this is why after a quick rally up, sometimes we get a response of a quick move down, right? So this is why I look for eventually after a V recovery, a rounded bottom that is higher than the previous bottom. So I would love to see a rounded bottom right around here. If we can come up even over here, right at the point of control, right around $3, I would take any of that. That would be an Adam and Eve structure. And if that happens, this would be a good level to start buying. The reality is the invalidation is here. If we break below $1.50, $1.70, and we break below that, guys, we're coming down. We were coming down. And again, that point of interest, that green arrow that I put in earlier, right here, that's the next target. That's where I would be like, okay, if we come down, we're breaking down further. What can we do? We made a lower low, a lower high, another lower low, and we keep on coming down. Now, if we could get a structured higher low here and then break this top for a higher high, guys, it's going to look really good, right? We start coming back up, and then we start, testing these tops again. Do we finally break out? Do we finally break out and start moving to the upside? What does this look like? Adam and Eve structure, 100%. It starts to look great. Let's take a look at some oscillators. I like the way the price action has been behaving in comparison to the rest of the market. It's been doing pretty good. What I don't like is the trend oscillator facing down right now, but it has been trending to the upside for a good while, as you can see, looking pretty good. Higher highs and higher lows. Boom. In the bullish control zone, not bad. So as long as we can stay in this bullish trend to the upside, we're doing okay here, guys. You can see, look at the purple expansions, definitely moving upwards. Blue expansions, definitely moving upwards. So everything is an upwards trajectory. EMAs, expansions, everything. But this last little retracement right here is what's worrying people. Of course, peaks and valleys, ebbs and flows. This is what happens, guys, until we continue to the upside again. Obviously, I don't like the red histogram bars down here. I don't like the bearish divergence identified, but maybe this retracement is over. I'm just throwing it out there. Maybe the retracement is over. Let me clean up some of this, and then so we can see it a bit better, and then we'll get back into the oscillators. Give me a second, guys. What happened to my oscillators? Boom. There we go. Now, if we look at what's going on here with the momentum oscillator, what I don't like about it is that we're rolling over. Fine, I see that. What I love about it is this right here, that we're oversold, and this right here that we did not get above the 70% mark. The momentum oscillator, the purple line did not break above. Let me just get this a little bit bigger. Hold on. There we go. So the purple line did not get above the 70 in a good way, right? So we retraced. We get support in the chop zone again, which is the 50%. We get support. As if we get a bullish response here and we go up, it's likely that the momentum is going to go up and get severely overbought. I want you to reflect on last time we got severely overbought. Okay, just look, right? And, you know, we get somewhat overbought, we back dip, and then we go up again like crazy, you know, and this happens, right? So what does that look like? Let's just look at this general area on the chart, and how does it look like? Okay, look what happened. Spikes, spike, spike. Let me just open this up a little bit. And so we can refer to when we get overbought, pump, pump, right? Pump, straight up, the whole thing. Now, I'm not saying that it's going to happen, but what I'm saying is this the beginning, right? We're here. Do we stay overbought? Go overbought, pump, stay overbought, pump. Do we go up for higher highs now? And that's the thing, guys. It is possible that we start shifting here and eventually treating this as a bull flag where we continue to the upside after an impulse, as I mentioned in the beginning. And again, if Ethereum gives us all the signals we need, it is very likely that that happens, right? Ethereum, it's all right now, honestly, we're all banking on Ethereum's price action. Okay, we need Ethereum to step it up and do its thing to hold up and crank up these altcoins to much higher levels. Let's go on the 6 hour just real quick to see what's happening here. Let's get rid of the oscillators for a second. Again, impulsive moves, you know, nice impulsive moves, retracement, sideways, impulsive moves, sideways, impulsive move. You know, maybe this is a 5-wave structure on the 6 hour and we end up going up here. This will be a bit of resistance. I can imagine there'll be a bit of resistance here. There's an empty volume gap. We hit this level, we get some resistance. After that, bang, straight up. And up here, there's not much volume. It's a psychological level, right? There's not much happening here, as you can see, in comparison to here. Majority of the emotion is right here. If we can blast through this, anything above 577 is psychological tops based on risk to reward, right? Not necessarily actually resistance zones that, you know, you will have stop loss liquidity here or liquidity zones here for people going short, but short squeezes will be amazing here. You know, people shorting the tops, which is viable. But what about if the market decides to move bullish? Those shorts will get liquidated. Those shorts will get wrecked, and those squeezes will begin, and then we'll start moving to the upside. And just keeping in mind that the bearish case scenario is meant to come down and to hunt liquidity to much lower levels. Again, I just got to make sure that we have both thesis totally accounted for. Bearish momentum, if we come down, the liquidity to hunt is all the way down to below $1 or so. Guys, that would be crazy, again, but we need to be aware of the possibilities. This is why invalidation is key. I believe that if we get below $1.70, invalidate your bullish thesis. And unfortunately, the risk to reward is not really in your favor in that case, because you can see the dip is significant all the way down here. So what I would do is, if you're looking for an entry, I would be looking for your entry on the 6 hour or the 4 hour. looking for a structure right into here, you know, something like that, using the 200 EMA on the 6 hour, buy into this level, and your invalidation should be right around $3.80. Guys, it's pretty good, guys. Generally speaking, we're in a good spot here in this market for Pendle to do well, and many other projects, you know, of course, dependent on Ethereum. Guys, if I've offered you any value in this video, do the channel a massive favor, slap the like button. It does really help out with the algorithm. If you want to follow me on the socials, the links are in the description below. Feel free to join the Discord, guys. The Discord is where it's at. Lots of good alpha, trade setups, fundamentals, and learning material. The best part is it's absolutely free. Guys are going to be live at 8 p.m. EST, so feel free to join. Take care, have a good one, and don't forget, buy the dip.